Hi everyone. Hi everyone and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Damiano Meola, Marketing Director at the Datapil company. For those who may not be familiar with what we do, Datapil specializes in travel intelligence, providing data and insights for the tourism and hospitality industry. Today, we're talking about Milano Cortina 2026 through what the data is already telling us right now. Let's say that over the past months, the Olympics have been described with big words and even big numbers. What we want to do instead is very simple. Look at the data, understand what's already moving, and translate that into practical implications for destinations and hospitality operators. One thing is very clear. Milano Cortina 2026 won't just bring more visitors. It will compress demand, push prices, and raise expectations, all at the same time. The real question here isn't just how many people will come, but when they come and what kind of experience they will expect. And that's exactly what we want to focus on today. To do that, we're mixing data and real-world experience. With me today, we're happy to have Giovanna Manzi, Senior Advisor and Board Member at H&H Hospitality, former CEO Best Western Italy. Ciao Giovanna. Grazie per essere qua. With Giovanna, we'll stress test the data from a business point of view, what makes sense, where the real risks and the opportunities are. And also my colleague Federica Amati, Sales Engineer at Datapil. Ciao Federica.
Ciao, good afternoon everyone.
Federica will share the key insights from our latest analysis, pricing, saturation, accommodation, and demand patterns. So we'll keep this dynamic and concrete. We'll take one insight at a time. And just before starting, two quick notes. Drop your questions in the chat as we go. We'll pick a few to answer live at the end of the webinar. Plus, you'll receive the full report straight to your inbox shortly after the session. So let's move on. Federica, I would start with pricing. The data shows a very sharp price peak during the Olympic weeks. In some cases, up to an increase of 146% year on year. With demand heavily concentrated in the central days. Can you walk us through what's driving this pressure?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everyone, again, and thank you, Damiano, for the introduction. Yes, that's right. So what you just mentioned, we will witness through our data, so through our OTA saturation and OTA rates data sets, we will witness a very strong increase in prices and also occupancy rates, which means that the Olympic Games compared to the last year will, of course, call the attention of a very, very wide audience. This means that visitors on one side, they for sure they have a very strong willingness to pay, but on the other hand, we have to mention a few factors that could be considered as the drivers of such a phenomenon. What you were saying before, so yes, we will see an increase of up to 171%, especially for the short-term rentals, which will be the sector mostly affected by such peaks. But on the other hand, we have to say that already in mid-January, the saturation rate was more than 55%. So this means that actually this phenomenon means that most of the OTA offers were booked, of course, by visitors online. But on the other hand, we have to say that the trajectory goes towards sellout, since most of the establishments they did prefer. No, of course, they did agree before with teams or in general organizers of the Olympic Games, so what we are seeing right now is that most of the available offers are reducing compared to the last year by almost 40%. On the other hand, we have to say that the rate pressure will be geographically widespread, so it will involve actually most of the areas, so like Tesero, Predazzo, which are, the smallest areas as well, which will be, of course, affected by this phenomenon. And we will see some maximum rates reaching over 1,000 euro per night. Some other drivers that could be mentioned, so apart from direct sales of available offers, both in the short-term rentals and hospitality sectors, are of course the air capacity, which will increase and which we'll see later, but also the concentration of events, especially ski and snowboard races, that will take place during the central week of the Olympic Games, which means that there will be a very strong pressure on those days.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Federica. Giovanna, let me bring you in here. Let's say that from your experience, how far can pricing be pushed during an exceptional event like this without damaging brand value and reputation in the medium to long term? Actually, it's like a trade-off between revenue optimization and brand protection.
Yes, right. Good point, Damiano. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this webinar, and thank you to our audience today. Yes, it's a very surprising, not because the increase of the prices, of course, but it's surprising the speed, may I say, the speed and the magnitude of this increase. With in some cases more than doubling, and the models also indicate that the dynamics is more or less 3 times, and the occupancy already exceed the 60%, as you said, but probably the real one is much more, could be around 18 already. So the key question is not if the markets, if the event during the dates of the event can absorb this kind of prices, because it's clear that it's possible. But what happens after the games? What happens the day after the games? In premium destination, this kind of increase where the prices are already high, of course, even a smaller percentage of increase translates into a significant perceived gap, value gap. If the pricing runs ahead, the problem is the service delivery. The reputational risk there is under the corner, is substantial. In my experience, brands are built over years but damaged in one season. So we have to be very, very, very careful. The suggestion here is to add real services, real value, real features perceived by the customer as something that that for them it's critical to customer. It's critical means that has a value for them. In other words, you have to add services. You have to design a service strategy more than an operational strategy. This is basically the point. So when you maximize the RevPAR, I guess a lot of revenue managers are party for this kind of results. But when you maximize RevPAR in this kind of event, this makes sense only if the service standard is clearly upgraded. The guest expectations are actively managed through communication, and the operational model is also designed to resist to peak stress. This is important also because you will have in your hotels, in your accommodation property, you will have different feeder market, different culture, different people. So this is very crucial. Don't forget to do this and try to protect your brand equity and long-term demand. Because often this generate lifetime value and a repeating customer. So I think this is the point. We can go back. We can go in deep later.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Amazing. I mean, this is the only way to leave a mark, to leave a legacy, even, in the medium and long term. All right. Moving on, Federica. Another strong signal in the data is OTA saturation, already well above, as we said, historical levels, and the fact that short-term rentals show the highest price growth overall. Tell us about visitor behavior.
Yes, sure. Exactly. So the OTA saturation will grow on average by 15% compared to what happened in February 2025. But on the other hand, we have to keep in mind that the visitors, as I was saying before, coming to the Olympic Games that will attend races and opening and closing ceremonies are mostly are mostly looking for high-end services. So it means that this kind of visitors are, of course, have a very strong willingness to pay, and they do prefer 4 and 5-star hotels, which have the highest occupancy rates, around 45%, and in these cases the rate increase will be between 40 and 60%. So it means that visitors in this case, they are of course the biggest spenders, since the maximum rates will be around 2,000 euros per night. But on the other hand, a sharp increase can be witnessed also in the 2-star hotels, which will also have increased by up to 100% compared to the last year. But so before we were talking about the short-term rentals increasing in rates and also in occupancy. What we can say is that in general, visitors prefer a very flexible and good located solution, since they are looking for tranquility and a very high level of comfort when traveling. So it means that if a family or a group of friends are going to attend a competition, maybe they will prefer a much more tranquil, calm solution instead of a more traditional one. So this reveals that of course, we will face a very diverse audience, which we will keep in mind. I mean, the fact that the Olympic Games will call the attention of visitors coming also from extra EU countries. So it means that we will have to adapt to suit our solutions in terms of comfort to different cultures as well. But on the other hand, we have to say that the audience is expecting well-located and well-equipped apartments, of course.
Yeah, great. And Giovanna, to me, this raises a broader question. Considering the boom in short-term rentals during mega events like the Olympics, where do hotels still have room to differentiate and reposition themselves?
Yes, Damiano. Despite what Federica said, I think here the hotels, let's say traditional accommodations have a very important role because again, the service will be the key in this kind of event. To my view, to my point of view, the acceleration of short-term rental pricing compared to hotel is also a critical signal because from one side, you are right, it's a flexible offer. It's also increase a capacity where, especially in location where hotels are not so present. So it's there. Overall, it's an important type of accommodation, and we rely on them. But on the other hand, we introduce also a systemic risk in this kind of extreme high demand moment because very often short-term rentals lack on standardized service delivery. Sometimes professional guest journey management, it's not so high. And also the crisis handling capabilities is not so, sharp, let's say. So during an event like the Olympics, you have so many factors, so many things that can happen, that it's not only the individual experience, it's become from a narrative where everybody contribute in a positive or a negative sense to design the storytelling of a region, in this case of our country, of a nation. So if in this context, a managed growth in short rental can negatively,
Yeah, understood.
affect the sentiment, logistic. Think about safety. Think about the overall perception. So this is something that we have to take into consideration. And again, the hotels here could be a very crucial role because they can play the service, they can play the people, they can put people in front, they can empower the people at the very first level. This is the key for hotel in order to differentiate this experience. The hotel can be an experience orchestrator overall, all around. They can deliver reliability, service continuity, and emotional reassurance in a moment in which the locations are crowded. So probably problems will happen in any case.
Yeah.
So the service again is so important. I would like also to say something about technology. Because short rentals could also cover some gaps using technology such as a CRM, such as dynamic stuff in real-time guest feedback, for instance, in order to accommodate some critical issues. So don't forget the technology. Of course, it's not the time to implement now, probably. You have you should do before,
Years
but
ago.
think about the technology can support this moment in a very effective way.
Yeah. And of course, I would say the traveler experience is core, is key for the hotels, but also for the destination where I'm in Cortina, I'm in Milano. This is my experience, and that's what I'll bring back home, and where we can create, as we said, a legacy. Yeah. Wonderful. Moving on, the latest insight. Federica, the data also shows a clear increase in air capacity from long-haul markets with strong growth from, for example, United Arab Emirates, especially through Milan. What does this tell us about the profile of visitors expected during the games?
Thank you for your question. Well, let's say that overall the data indicates that there will be two different scenarios. So of course, visitors coming from extra EU countries will concentrate in Milano's hubs, which in fact the overall air capacity of Milano air hubs is expected to increase by 6%, and the cities of origin that will be covered will be almost 200. So it means that on one hand, the air capacity will grow, of course, and on the other hand, the fares are also on average, fares are increasing by 3 to 4% compared to the last year. But what we'll see is especially a higher number of visitors coming from extra-EU countries. So, as you were mentioning, the Emirates will, we will expect almost a 30% increase of air capacity for the visitors coming from the Emirates, and also from Poland as well. But on the other hand, we also have to mention that in Europe, we will see a slight increase also for the air capacity from Spain and from England, but then from Poland as well, which is from Germany, sorry, which will be around 20% almost. We will also witness, of course, an increase in fares, something which will be much more visible also in the domestic market, since we expect that Italian visitors will commute to the Olympic Games headquarters by cars or by trains and so on. So it means that domestic flights will not be, the very first option that visitors will choose. But on the other hand, we also see an average increase in fares, so from EU and extra-EU markets overall. So this is the scenario that we will face. On the other hand, the domestic market will concentrate, domestic visitors, those that we will choose flights to travel to the Olympic Games will mostly land on Venice airport. So yeah, that's why let's say that we will see a mix-up of factors and also choices.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Federica. We cherry-picked, let's say, the top three, but you'll find all the details in the full report, as we said. Giovanna, with this type of international high spending demand, expectations rise, of course. In your view, where is value really created under this level of pressure? In communication, service design, as we said, in execution, let's deep dive into this.
Okay, first of all, we have to remind that when we increase prices, especially at this level, three times we said before, the increase is
exponential,
and the same kind of trend is for the expectations. So. And it's not said that this kind of exponential curve has the same kind of trend. One could be also peak, that could be smooth, no? So this is the real risk. The point is not filling rooms here, because we saw the data. The point is to delivering on the promise, and execution is the decisive factor, we said. Okay, so less marketing claims and more flawless operational coordination, staff readiness and empowerment, and the ability to manage peak moments without service degradation. What this means? First of all, empower your people. How can you do this? For instance, you can assign a daily budget at the very first level of the service, where the people are in contact with the customer. So don't let any kind of problem become a big problem and escalate. solve the problems in the moment in which this problem occurred, in this problem happens, okay? Give, like a daily budget, give, I don't know, 1,000 euros per day. Let's say this kind of amount. For what? To pay an extra fee for taxi for a customer, in order to not let him to lose the airplane. I don't know, this kind of stuff. So something that the people at the very first level of the service line could solve at that moment, trusting your people. You have powerful tool, you have powerful mean, that is the people that can provide an exceptional service. Another point is to design a service that not consider only your service inside, in-house service, also consider effect from external, like train that can be delayed, or taxi that now the customer can't find, something like that. So try to figure out even the most impossible or not real event, in order to have a solution for that event, even a solution that can compensate the customer, not only, no? So try to do this in order not to break the service line, because when you are sorry, when I talk, I like I address my communication to this hypothetical hotelier, no? The owner of the hotel. But when a general manager has to be included to solve a problem, this breaks the service line, no? So this is something that should not happen, okay? So remember that these countries, we saw Poland, we saw Middle East, Emirates, or Europe, like Germany, but they have different expectations. They have a different attitude to luxury, for instance, or to service intensity. For one, could be important to have privacy. For another, could be important to have a lot of communication, pre-arrival communication. So you have to have different sensitivities. I would like to say that in this moment, I think you have to put on the table cultural intelligence more than operational intelligence. So you have to try to figure out these differences, because personalization of experience, it's the most powerful tool we have, but it's not said that all the customers like or prefer this kind of personalization, because sometimes personalization is the trade-off privacy. So we have to balance this kind of attitude, this kind of activities.
Absolutely. I building on this, Giovanna, I would say that, as always, mapping out the traveler journey, the customer journey, being empathetic is the key, of course, as we said. And then, as you stated before, service design probably is the key word here. Not to broke the service line in a figuring out which is the journey, and having a delightful, I would say, experience. With this kind of expectation, we need to aim to delight the customers, instead of just bringing a good enough experience. All right then.
May I say, like, a final consideration?
Absolutely.
Of course, these events, it's a stress test, no? Not only for Milano, Cortina, or the north of Italy, northeast of Italy, but also for the Italian hospitality. A lot of countries, a lot of people are looking at us, so we should also try to be responsible as Italians. Let me say this. So Olympics is not only a revenue opportunity. No, it's something that will live as a legacy, and this legacy will be measured by repeat visitation, international brand perception, and the ability of destination to evolve structurally after this kind of games. So, of course, capturing demand is important. Keeping the promise is essential. And turning this exceptional moment into a long-term competitive advantage is the real strategic challenge for the Italian hospitality. I think we will succeed, but we have to be all together, providing the best service we can.
Yeah, the best experience altogether to the audiences. So, thank you both. Thank you very much for the insights. I think this clearly shows that Milano Cortina 2026 is not just about volumes, as we said, but about managing intensity, expectation, and this is my favorite keyword, a legacy. This is an opportunity to leave a mark, as we said, to have a legacy for the next years. Perfect. So let's 30 minutes. Perfect. Let's take a few questions directly from the chat. Let me see if we have any. Nope. If you want to drop questions, otherwise, as I said briefly, we schedule, I think at 6, you receive in your inbox the full report, and of course you'll get the video recording of this webinar.
There is a question.
Yeah. Suspense. A question. Then Philip, we're waiting for you.
Waiting, Philip, we can say that in any case, we are reachable through LinkedIn if you want,
of course,
to also to ask questions after.
Absolutely. All the materials will be available to everyone who subscribed to this webinar. So video, slides, and of course the full report.
Probably the Philip question is very.
Yeah, let's wait some.
Milano still seems a bit forced a proposal. What do Cortina and the mountain say?
Says. Yeah. Federica, you want to?
Yes. Let's say that, as I was mentioning before, the increase in saturation rates and also in tariffs will be widespread all over the areas, and especially the internal areas will be affected by this phenomenon. So even though we did not mention them, Livigno, Tesero, Predazzo, of course, but also Bormio, which are, I mean, Bormio is a very well-known and popular destination, but they were, I mean, largely affected by these trends, and especially for the increases in high-end services, of course, so the 4 and 5 star hotels, but in the smaller areas, short-term rentals were predominant. So basically, we can say that these trends are affecting the areas in the same way, which means that we are, I mean, these areas are reaching a new kind of visibility, of course, on OTA channels. So we saw also an increase of available offers for smaller destinations. But on the other hand, we will have to see if after the Olympic Games, this trend will keep the same or not. And as as Giovanna was saying before, we will have to insist about the importance of the legacy of the Olympics. So if market trends will stay the same or not, at least for a few weeks then.
So this could be a halo effect, I would say,
Yeah.
to all the northern part of Italy and Dolomites, the Alps. Of course, meeting the expectations is key. Giovanna, do you want to add something here?
I would like to say that it's important to have designed this kind of event in such a way in which it's not concentrated only in a specific territories or specific locations, but it's some a lot. Now we can say that we have a lot of destination. It's important for Italy, especially if we look at let's say the problem. It's not the problem, but the point of what we call over tourism. No, so the crowd in some specific destination. Here we have the opportunity to spread the tourists in different destination, in different area and locations. So we have the opportunity also to showcase our beauty in not only in the, let's say, traditional or very well-known location. So I think it's a very good point for the future. I believe it very much strongly.
Absolutely. We have another question from Anthony. It will be interesting to measure over the coming weeks the match or mismatch between the critical issues guests fear and their actual experience. Good work, everyone. Long live the Olympics. Yes, Anthony, we could take this as a suggestion. Let's say this is a predictive analysis. We can plan to have a second episode or second report afterwards, and let's see how it worked out. I would say, because especially working on the customer experience, which basically is measured by the sentiment and this kind of semantic activities on digital traces and reviews. We can take this suggestion and have a second episode. Federica, Giovanna, thank you very much for your effort and contribution. As I said, if you want to reach out, you can find all our contacts in the online. And Federica, Giovanna, ancora, thank you very much.
Thank you to
Thank
you,
you. Thank you.
Data Pill company, to you guys, and to all the audience that are follow us.
Long live the Olympics.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.